People with Asperger syndrome see, hear, and feel the world differently to other people. If you have Asperger syndrome, you have it for life. It is not an illness or disease and cannot be cured. Often people feel that Asperger syndrome is a fundamental aspect of their identity. Autism is a spectrum condition. All autistic people share certain difficulties, but being autistic will affect them in different ways. Some people with Asperger syndrome also have mental health issues or other conditions, meaning people need different levels and types of support. People with Asperger syndrome are of average or above average intelligence. They don't have the learning disabilities that many autistic people have, but they may have specific learning difficulties. They have fewer problems with speech, but may still have difficulties with understanding and processing language. With the right sort of support, all can be helped to live a more fulfilling life of their own choosing. How common is Asperger syndrome? Autism, including Asperger syndrome, is much more common than most people think. There are around 700,000 autistic people in the UK. That's more than 1 in 100. People with Asperger syndrome come from all nationalities and cultural, religious and social backgrounds, although it appears to affect more men than women. How do people with Asperger syndrome see the world? Some people with Asperger syndrome say the world feels overwhelming, and these can cause them considerable anxiety. In particular, understanding and relating to other people and taking part in everyday family, school, work and social life can be harder. Other people appear to know intuitively how to communicate and interact with each other. Yet, they can also struggle to build a rapport with people with Asperger syndrome. People with Asperger syndrome may wonder why they are different and feel their social differences mean people don't understand them. Autistic people, including those with Asperger syndrome, often do not look disabled. Some parents of autistic children say that other people simply think their children are naughty, while adults find that they are misunderstood. A diagnosis is the formal identification of the condition, usually by a multidisciplinary diagnostic team, often including a speech and language therapist, pediatrician, psychiatrist, and/or psychologist. Because Asperger syndrome varies widely from person to person, making a diagnosis can be difficult. It is often diagnosed later in children than autism, and sometimes difficulties may not be recognized and diagnosed until adulthood. The benefits of a diagnosis. Some people see a formal diagnosis as an unhelpful label, but for many, getting a timely and thorough assessment and diagnosis may be helpful because it helps people with Asperger syndrome and their families, partners, employers, colleagues, teachers and friends to understand why they may experience certain difficulties and what they can do about them. And it also allows people to access services and support. How Asperger syndrome is diagnosed. The characteristics of Asperger syndrome vary from one person to another, but in order for a diagnosis to be made, a person will usually be assessed as having had persistent difficulties with social communication and social interaction, and restricted and repetitive partners of behaviors, activities, or interests since early childhood, to the extent that these limit and impair everyday functioning. Persistent difficulties with social communication and social interaction. Autistic people, including those with Asperger syndrome, have difficulties with interpreting both verbal and non-verbal language, like gestures or tone of voice. Many have a very literal understanding of language and think people always mean exactly what they say. They may find it difficult to use or understand facial expressions, tone of voice, jokes and sarcasm, vagueness, or abstract concepts. People with Asperger syndrome usually have good language skills, but they may still find it hard to understand the expectations of others within conversations, perhaps repeating what the other person has just said. This is called echolalia, or talking at length about their own interests. It often helps to speak in a clear, consistent way and to give people time to process what has been said to them. Social interaction. People with Asperger syndrome often have difficulty reading other people, i.e., recognizing or understanding other people's feelings and intentions and expressing their own emotions. This can make it very hard for them to navigate the social world. They may appear to be insensitive, seek out time alone when overloaded by other people, not seek comfort from other people, appear to behave strangely or in a way thought to be socially inappropriate. They may find it hard to form friendships. Some may want to interact with other people and make friends, but may be unsure how to go about it. The world can seem a very unpredictable and confusing place to people with Asperger syndrome, who often prefer to have a daily routine so that they know what is going to happen every day. They may want to always travel the same way to and from work or school, or eat exactly the same food for breakfast. The use of rules can also be important. It may be difficult for someone to take a different approach to something once they have been taught the right way to do it. They may not be comfortable with the idea of change, but may be able to cope better if they can prepare for changes in advance. Many people with Asperger syndrome have intense and highly focused interests, often from a fairly young age. These can change over time or be lifelong, and can be anything from art or music to trains or computers. An interest may sometimes be unusual. One person loved collecting rubbish, for example. With encouragement, the person developed an interest in recycling and the environment. Many channeled their interests into studying, paid work, volunteering, or other meaningful occupations. People with Asperger syndrome often report that the pursuit of such interests is fundamental to their well-being and happiness. People with Asperger syndrome may also experience over or under sensitivity to sounds, touch, tastes, smells, light, colors, temperatures, or pain. For example, they may find certain background sounds, which other people ignore or block out, unbearably loud or distracting. This can cause anxiety or even physical pain. Or they may be fascinated by lights or spinning objects. The exact cause of autism, including Asperger syndrome, is still being investigated. Research into causes suggests that a combination of factors, genetic and environmental, may account for differences in development. It is not caused by a person's upbringing, their social circumstances, and is not the fault of the individual with the condition. There is no cure for Asperger syndrome. However, there is a range of strategies and approaches which people may find to be helpful.